The Duke, a gloomy boy with red eyes, suffers from a curse that a witch put on him. Everything he touches dies. Therefore, he was destined for loneliness. He lives in a mansion alone, having only his maid Alice. She is the daughter of his family's maid who passed away many years ago. The girl acts provocatively towards him despite knowing his touch would be fatal, and enjoys tempting him with her body so she can enjoy his reactions. But she is the only one who decided to stay despite the risk of death. The Duke is flattered by her appreciation, but also feels constrained by her condition. He rejects all the daring of his maid with a terrible fear of accidentally touching her. The story starts with the Duke, a young noble bewitched to turn anything he touches lifeless. He is being served tea by his maid Alice. She asks about a letter he was writing earlier if he is going to send it to his family, but he claims it's for practice so he can't send it. Alice casually tries to flirt with him, enjoying the funny reactions he gives. The Duke is seated on a swing, in the garden, reminiscing the time he was bewitched, and how everyone turned their backs on him except his maid Alice, who is the daughter of his family head maid. While at hit, he loses balance and mistakenly touches a tress which immediately falls as he touches. As he stands up, Alice shows up again and begins to flirt with him. Alice insists on dressing the Duke as he prepares for a meeting with his childhood friend who is said to be visiting. Phillips visits, and they both sit for tea and spoke a bit. As Philip is about to leave, he asks Alice to show him the restroom. On their way there, he stops her and tells her to leave the Duke, referring to him as a monster, saying he will help her get a better job. The Duke overheard and interrupts Philip, who leaves after an intense argument with the Duke. The Duke's butler, Rob, who has been absent due to a back injury resume, Alice continues her usual antics of flirting with the Duke, as Rob tells them how excited he is to see their faces again, as Rob goes off to work in the garden. The Duke tells Alice about how Rob has been a father figure to him ever since he left his family home. The Duke gets distracted by Alice, who is cleaning. She eventually catches him staring at her, and he calls her to sit beside him and listen to him play. After playing for Alice, he decides to take a nap, but wakes up after Alice teases him again. The Duke is in shock as he receives an unexpected guest, his younger sister Viola. Alice serves Viola tea as she teases her brother, who is still surprised to see her. Viola notices the Duke's interest in Alice and advises him. As Viola heads out to leave, she bumps into Rob and runs off blushing. The Duke bumps into a black cat as he heads into his room. He quickly calls for Alice, who comes and plays it until it starts to run after the Duke. After seeing the glowing pendant on his neck, they find a note which "Please forgive me" on the cat's neck. The Duke stands at the ballroom staring at the moon as Alice comes to join. After talking about Rob's stories of the Duke's grandfather and Alice's mother dancing in the ballroom, the Duke suggests they give it a try, and they dance without making contact with each other. Alice and Rob cheers the Duke as he plays snooker. Alice eventually joins him, and they both agree that whoever loses does whatever the winner says. Alice wins, and as they both agreed, she asks the Duke to take a trip to town with her. He agrees eventually after much persuasion from Alice. The Duke disguises himself in a costume and goes to town with Alice. As they tour the town, they both get separated as the Duke is having difficulty handling the costume. While searching for the Duke, Alice bumps into a masked woman who seems to know her mother's name. The Duke sees a boy crying for his mother. He spots a piano and decides to play it to cheer the little boy. As he starts playing, everyone gathers around dancing. After playing, Alice finds him and they head home. The Duke heads to Alice's room, reading a note from her that says he can come to her room if he cannot sleep. He meets Alice naked and quickly rushes out, ordering her to dress, which she did, and invites him in. She serves him tea and asks him to lie down on the bed. While dozing off, he tells her there's something he'd like to show her the next night. The Duke takes Alice to the lake to show her a meteor shower that only happens once in a decade. The Duke is worried that Alice has been avoiding him, and she has not been flirting and teasing him like she always does. He notices she is sick as Rob helps him touch her forehead. He tells her to get some rest as he sits beside her bed to comfort her. Alice flirts with the Duke at night as he complains of the cold. As he goes to bed, Alice brings out a scarf she knitted and wraps it around his neck, telling him to put it on as they go out to have fun tomorrow. Alice and the Duke go out to play in the snow. Rob joins them and starts to build a snowman. Alice and the Duke give him a helping hand. While at it, they start throwing snowballs at each other. Alice notices one of her mother's earrings is missing from her ear. The Duke goes into the snow to look for it, but he collapses due to exhaustion. A witch named Cuff, who has been looking for shelter, finds him as she comes to the mansion and decides to help him find the earring. The Duke invites Cuff in, and Alice scolds him for giving out in the cold, but calms down after the Duke gives her the earring. Alice takes Cuffs to the shower and serves her food after. Cuff and the Duke talks about the witches, and if she knows anyway, he can break his curse. But Cuff says she can't help him since she has no knowledge about it, and tells them that her friend who she is in search of can come up with an answer. She takes off and leaves after Alice mended her robe for her. Viola comes visiting, rushing in uninvited, but gets nervous and begins to stutter as she sights Rob. The Duke calls her Panther for being in love with someone older than her, but she disagrees, saying boys her age act childish. Alice serves Viola tea, and Viola decides to teach her the Viola method charm. Viola visits again and bumps into Rob as she opens the door. They both join Alice and the Duke in the kitchen, and Viola asks to help Alice with the cooking in order to impress Rob. Noticing her motives, the Duke asks Viola to join Rob in shaping the bread dough, and she gladly agrees with a blush on her face. Rob gifts her some bread dough as she takes her leave. The Duke is watching Alice skating on ice until he notices a talking bird. The bird turns out to be Cuff's missing friend Zane, who is also looking for Cuff. He asks them about Cuff, who comes out of Alice's dress. They all join Alice skating with the Duke holding onto Alice's dress. As they take their leave, Cuff tells the Duke about taking him to the next witch's Sabbath that will be held in the blood moon. To do some investigation regarding his curse, Viola visits Alice's room to sleep over. The Duke goes to the conservatory to read, but finds it in a mess, as he haven't been there in a while. He and Alice decides to weed it. The Duke uses his curse to kill some of the plants to make the work faster. He gifts Alice a garland he made with dried flowers that withered after he touched them. Back at the mansion, their mom is worried that Viola has not been dining with them lately, but she lies that she's been visiting a friend. The Duke wanders around as he is unable to sleep. He rushes to Alice's room as he hears her voice. She tells him this is due to a cat that she saw while showering. They eventually find the cat and send it off. Cuff and Zane arrives to take the Duke to the witch's Sabbath. Alice asks to go with them as they all went through a portal Zane opens using the Duke's mirror. They arrive at the witch's Sabbath with the Duke, and Alice wearing a disguise Zane gave them to cover their human smell. Daleth, the stranger Alice met once in town, is the leader of the witches taking their attendance. After the meeting, Alice and the Duke goes to Daleth, who quickly recognizes them. She tells the Duke to give up on trying to break the curse as the witch who cursed him is dead. Alice gets a magic pot made by a witch, and she uses the pot to cook a potion, hoping it will break the Duke's curse. After cooking it, the Duke tries it, but unfortunately it wasn't effective, so she promises the Duke that she will find another way to break the curse. Alice brings a note for the Duke to play, a cursed note that makes anyone who performs it run mad, and if he manages to play till the end, he will get rid of the curse. The Duke starts to play, and the spirit of McFarlane, the composer of the song, appears and starts to taunt the Duke. He finally played it till the end, but his curse wasn't broken. Instead, it's McFarlane's spirits who thanks him, and then disappears. The Duke visits Alice's room while waiting for her by the door. He gets a flashback of when Viola tells him about the suspension bridge effect, when someone's heart pounds with love for the other person. Ever since, the Duke have been trying to scare Alice to make her heart pound. But all of his efforts were futile. The Duke goes into hiding after he mistakenly broke a flower vase, which makes Rob very upset. Alice finds him hiding in the wardrobe and joins him there. They leave there and go to hide under the Duke's bed, where Rob eventually finds them. Cuff is learning how to read and write from Rob as she wants to surprise Zane and stop depending on him, but she's having a problem learning it. The Duke's younger brother Walter is mad at Viola as he finds out she is going to visit their elder brother. Viola leaves for the Duke's house, and Walter joins their mom for dinner and tells her Viola has gone to visit a friend. Viola arrives at the Duke's house and sees Cuff, suspecting she is a burglar. Viola pins her down, and the Duke, Rob, and Alice join them. Alice and the Duke plays chess together. While playing, they both start to reminisce. Flashbacks show the first time Alice came to the mansion. Rob brings her into a dark, tattered room, where the Duke sits down looking tattered and depressed, and he scolds Rob for bringing in a maid, and then tells Alice to go back to where she came from. Rob shows her to her room, but the Duke refuses to accept Alice, and continues trying to chase her away. The Duke takes Alice to his scattered room and orders her to clean it up within 3 days. Failure to do so will get her sacked. She cleaned it up within a day, and reports back to him, which leaves him furious. Later that night, the Duke drops a note and leaves a note saying if Alice doesn't leave, he will. As he leaves, he collapses on the snow, hoping to die, but Alice comes for him and scolds him for throwing his life away. Ever since, the Duke has been in love with her. It's Christmas Eve. Viola sought Alice and the Duke's advice on what to give Rob for Christmas. They finally settle on her getting him a handkerchief, which she gladly agrees to as she rushes back home. It's Christmas Day. The Duke and Alice are planning a Christmas party since Cuff and Zane will be visiting. Walter disguises as Viola's driver and follows her as she goes to visit their brother, whom he despises. Cuff and Zane arrive with a Christmas tree, and Alice and Cuff decorate the tree, while Zane and the Duke decorate the room. While at it, the Duke advises Zane to confess his feelings for Cuff to her. Walter and Viola finally arrives. Viola rushes in, forgetting the gift she brought for Rob. Walter finds it and decides to take it to her. As he goes in, he spots a Santa costume and wears it as a disguise. He bumps into Cuff, who has always been obsessed with Santa. She collects Viola's present for Rob from him and starts to chase him about as he runs off. Viola quickly recognizes Walter as he comes out to them, claiming to be Santa Claus. The Duke is dumbfounded to meet his younger brother. Walter orders him to stop calling his older brother and calls him his rival. Before leaving, Walter wagers that whoever uncovers the truth about the Duke's curse gets to be the head of the family. Flashback shows Alice as her kid and her mom Sharon when she still works as the head maid at the main house. The Duke mom seems pissed that Walter and Viola didn't spend Christmas at home, while Viola blames Walter for it. Cuff goes to the market on her own to get foodstuff, while Zane follows her discreetly, but comes out to save her when she is robbed by a pickpocket. The Duke stays in the ballroom as he is unable to sleep. Alice goes to him and suggests they sleep together in his room, and she will leave when he falls asleep. But he's still unable to sleep as Alice keeps flirting with him. Alice asks the Duke how he feels about his mom, and the Duke answers, also saying he will tell his mom about them when he breaks the curse. Rob is excited to see the Duke has been smiling more. Flashbacks of when Rob and the Duke came to the villa newly. The Duke is always sad and gloomy, but all of that changes after Alice starts working there. The Duke asks Alice to sing along as he plays the piano, and walks her to her room after playing. Viola and a nagging Walter are in the storeroom looking for clues to break the Duke's curse. Viola eventually finds a servant logbook. She bumps into her mom, who scolds her dress sense and instructs her to dress properly. Viola, dressed in a gown, reports back to her mom, who instructs her to keep dressing that way. The Duke tries to console Viola as she nags about how their mom treats her. She begs him to let her move to his place, but he refuses. Viola and Alice find Cuff in Alice's room as they go in. They all dress in the pajamas Viola bought for them. She hands over the servant logbook to Alice. Daleth invites Zane over to ask him a favor. Alice goes through the logbook with Rob and discovers a page where Mom writes about two strange women who came into the mansion. Alice suspects one of them to be Daleth. Zane visits the Duke with a message from Daleth saying they should be friends. The Duke finds Zane on the rooftop as he is about to burn the logbook. He stops and confesses that Daleth used Cuff as a leverage to make him to get rid of the logbook. The Duke asks Zane to go on with saying he would do the same if someone uses Alice to threaten him, but Zane has something else in mind. The Duke receives a letter from his mom asking him to come to the main house in a week's time. It's finally D-Day, but the Duke is nervous because he hasn't been there since he moved to the villa. Alice asks to go with him and he agrees, also making up his mind that he is going to tell his mom about him and Alice. They arrive at the main house and meet Viola, who give them a message from their mom. He goes to her room to meet her. After exchanging pleasantries, she asks him to sleep over at the main house so they will talk tomorrow. Alice goes to meet the other maids who used to work with her mom. As they take her to a room, she meets the Duke's mom, who mistakes her for Sharon. The maid tells Alice that her mom and the Duke's mom used to be close friends until Sharon passed away. She has been acting strange ever since. Viola takes the Duke to the spot he was cursed, and flashbacks show as he tries to recall what happened that day. Viola and the Duke joins Walter and his mom for dinner, where she tells him about the head of the family inheritance and their father's health conditions. She orders him to break the curse by spring, or she makes Walter the heir. The Duke tells his mom about Alice, but she disapproves as she is still a possible heir, and Alice is Maid. But the Duke protests back and tells her how Alice has been good ever since she came to the villa. The whole room is shocked as he announces he is marrying Alice and takes his leave. But unlike what he thought, his mother smiles proudly at how much her son has matured. Alice and the Duke are on their way home. Playing cards before going to sleep, they confess their eternal love for each other. The end. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new anime recaps.